Welcome to the October 2nd, 2008 edition of the Open Forum. Again, God has made it possible for us to look together into the Word of God to discover truth. My, what a wonderful privilege this is. We're reminded that we're living, however, in a world of almost 7 billion people, and we are hoping to reach all of them with the truth that we are hearing right here on this program, namely that we're right at the end of the world and the sword of the Lord is coming to destroy the unsaved of the world, and the world must know about this. This is God's command to the believers that we're to watch and be ready. And we're reminded of this because I just received a little note from our international department to the effect that we are presently broadcasting in 37 languages, and we're ready to go on the air with our 38th language. And I'm sure that you're very familiar with this, or maybe you're not. It is the Uzbek language, U-Z-B-E-K. It is spoken in Uzbekistan, a nation of 20 to 25 million people in Central Asia. It is totally an Islamic country, and we have to reach them with the news that there is a judgment day that is almost here, but yet they can cry to God for His mercy. And if you would like to have us assist you in your responsibility as an ambassador of Christ to send the gospel into the world, to send this warning into the world, we would gladly be willing to serve as your agent, as you would send whatever funds you want invested in to invest in this. And remember that because we are professional broadcasters, we can get the most mileage possible, the most broadcast time possible for the least amount of money. And incidentally, let me remind us again that that we're able now to receive money from anywhere in the world. Here it is, maybe. By means of internet. Oh, that internet is a marvelous provision of God to the whole broadcasting program of reaching the world. But if anybody simply goes to finds a computer that's connected to internet, and then they click on familyradio.com, family radio, all is one word, .com, and then click on Secure Online Donation, and then click on either single donation or recurring donation. Then fill out the donation form with your financial information, and then click on the Submit Donation button. And that can be done anywhere in the world. Can you imagine that? So that it makes it very easy for true believers all over the world to carry out their desire to be obedient to God's command to warn the world that Judgment Day is coming, that we actually know the time, and yet at the same time they can cry, those who are concerned as they hear that warning can cry to God for mercy, and marvelously, wonderfully, God is saving a great multitude today. But This is your program. We want to hear from you. So shall we take our first call tonight, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 19.
1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 19. Let's turn to that. 1 Corinthians Better rearrange my Bible here a little bit. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 19. There we read, "For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and will bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent." Now, what is your question?
And Matthew 11, 28 and 29.
Matthew 11, 28 and 29. There we read, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls." Now, what is your question? Hello? Oh my, we've lost that caller. The wisdom, this is a very significant verse in 1 Corinthians. I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. God is not talking about the wise who identify with the true believers, particularly in the book of Proverbs, but elsewhere also. God talks about the wise as being those who have become saved. They're wise because they have adopted or are being instructed by the wisdom of God. But the world also has its wise. And in verse 18 of 1 Corinthians 1, it says, "For the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness." In their wisdom, they think it's a lot of nonsense. But unto us, which are saved, it is the power of God. And the wisdom of the world will all be destroyed. It will not help anyone at the time when Christ comes on the day of judgment. Now here in Matthew 12, where God is instructing us, "Take my yoke upon you." Now, when we take his yoke, it isn't as if we're in charge of this. To be yoked with God means that he has done all the work, and we're just trotting along beside him. The idea of a yoke is like animals that are pulling a load of some kind, a wagon of some kind. Well, Christ is doing all the work, and we're just alongside getting all the blessing because he has done all the work. And the way we take his yoke upon us is not by saying, "Oh Lord, I take your yoke upon me." No way. We plead with him, we beg of him, "Oh Lord, could we be identified with you? Could we also become saved?" That is our desire, because God is the one who has to do all the work. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Yes, Brother Camping.
Yeah.
I've heard you say a couple of times that the media wouldn't approach you in any way for an interview. I was wondering if have you ever considered public television? Have they approached you, or have you thought of approaching public television?
We have approached every media possibility that we could think of. We have approached them, and nobody has responded. We have not received one response. More than that, you must remember that we've been on the air here in the United States for almost 50 years. The Open for more than 45 years. And back in 1994, when we said that it was possible that 1994 might be the end, I had quite a few calls from the media. And so they were already then very well acquainted with us. In fact, I was interviewed in several instances by the media, but then it was still speculative. Maybe it's the end. And so it was an interesting subject to talk about. But now we're not coming on like it's maybe the end. We're saying it is the end. And more than that, we're coming with an enormously greater amount of biblical knowledge and substance as to why we are saying that. And the media people, they're not dumbbells. They're very, very well-educated people who can understand what is being said, and they know that what we are saying comes from the Bible and we are able to answer from the Bible, and it's too serious. They are in denial. It's a subject that's too awful to entertain at all.
Well, with all the media that there is, with all the media that there is, it stands to reason that there would be, some true believers that are involved in the media. Where are these people? It can't be a thing that each and every individual that has any control over each integral part of the media are non-believers.
Excuse me, it's far more complex than that. A media reporter is not his own man. He is working for a company, and that company is deeply concerned about what their media reporters are talking about and who they talk with, because they can do real damage to the media company. And so if a reporter, he might have an intense desire to want to do an interview on this subject, and yet when he goes to his bosses about this, they say, no, this is off limits. In other words, the media people that we hear on the air, they have to follow rules also. So it's very complex. But thank you.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Not just the grassroots people, the guys that would actually stick the microphone in your face, but I'm talking about these people's bosses. There has to be some true believers somewhere along in there.
Well, that's what you and I say, but where are they? Where are they? There is nobody responding. And we can argue all we want. Well, there has to be somebody out there. Well, maybe we can say that, but they're not showing up. They're not showing up. And it isn't because they don't know about family radio. And you have to remember that there is nothing in the whole wide world that is as spectacular and as a piece of news as what we are teaching. And there are literally thousands and thousands of people who are listening and know about this, and all the churches know about this. And so it isn't like it's just a little tiny pipsqueak piece of news that is not of interest. It is actually way, way larger news and way more important news than anything that is being aired in the world, anywhere in the world. But the fact is, it is news that people do not want to hear. They don't want to listen to it. They love this world. This is where their career is. This is where they're making their plans. This is where their aspirations are. And to talk seriously about the fact that it's all going to end in a few years, and this is being addressed by people who really know the Bible really well, and they're getting it out of the Bible, a book that is 1,900 years old. It makes it a very, very serious matter, and there are not a. And the fact is, they are not. They don't want to air that. They are in denial. They know where we are. They know absolutely where we are. They know how to get a hold of us, and we certainly have made a serious attempt to acquaint them with what we are now teaching, and yet there is not one caller. Now, God is in charge. I'm not saying that before the end there may be a breakthrough. There may be, but that's in God's care. God would have to set that up, but so far He has not. The task of letting the world know that Judgment Day has come is assigned to the true believers. They are the only ones that are watching. They are the ones that trust the Bible implicitly. They are the ones who take the commands of God seriously. And they can know how they can share in this great responsibility. It's a great responsibility of telling the world the date and the details of the end of time. And that's why God has raised up Family Radio as a means by which this can be done. But thank you for your thoughts on it. I would like to believe what you're saying, that there ought to be somebody, but so far it devolves entirely on the true believers, because they're the only ones who are accepting the idea that we've only got a little more than 2.5 years left and this world will come to an end. They are the only ones who implicitly trust everything in the Bible, not just what their church has been teaching. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Harold, I got two questions. The first question is, after the rapture and the people that are already saved are in heaven, you told me that a lot of everybody else, their bodies will be spread like manure and just be shamed on the earth. But who's going to be around to see that? Nobody's going to be here. How can you be shamed if nobody's going to be here?
Well, first of all, for 153 days, it begins with this is the day of judgment. It begins with a great earthquake, and there will be about 6.5 billion people, maybe a little more than that, who will be alive at the beginning of that earthquake that will take place on that first day. And many of them may be killed in that earthquake, but there'll still be billions of people alive. And this includes those who claim to be believers, and this includes those who know nothing about the Bible. And so those who claim to be true believers and maybe have been preachers and Bible teachers and what have you, and are left behind, this will be a this will be a great shame for them that they are left behind. But the greatest shame is not in the eyes of those who are left behind, but in the eyes of God Himself. They are shamed before God, and they are shamed before any other creations God has, the principalities and powers that He has created elsewhere in time or in the past or in eternity, and who have been witnessing what has been going on planet Earth. And so the people themselves who are dead and their bodies will be thrown out of the graves, they will also, that'll be a shame they will be shamed in the eyes of God. They themselves will not know they're being shamed, but nevertheless, they still will be shamed. Any more than, let's say, someone is executed because of doing terrible things in his country, and then if they shame him further by desecrating his dead body, that doesn't trouble him at all because he's dead. But nevertheless, it's a very shameful thing that he is experiencing.
And my second question was, do you believe that if 2011 really does happen, nobody really knows for a fact, of course, but do you believe the Vatican, the Pope, actually figured out that date too and don't want to cause a panic and kept it to themselves? Is that a possibility?
Do I believe the Pope figured out?
Do you believe that the Vatican, say the Pope, and everybody that's been studying the Bible just as long as you or even longer, is it possible they figured out 2011 but don't want to put people in a state of panic?
Well, now, we have to define studying the Bible, because people again and again look at this church man or that church man and they say, well, he has really been studying the Bible. Let me tell you, I come right out from the center of the churches. I have been a church person all my life, and I have served in various capacities in the church, and basically every person in any denomination, whether it's the Roman Catholic or the Baptist or the Mission Covenant or you name it, any denomination, they are, as they study the Bible, they are focusing on the doctrines that their church has. Every church has some kind of a creed or set of confessions or a catechism, and that is what they focus on. And that has been derived over hundreds of years and could be as old as many hundreds of years, and they just want to make sure that they remain faithful, or they study and prepare manuscripts and studies in case they are trying to make a change in a confession of some kind. But insofar as just looking at the Bible, this is the Word of God. Every word has come from the mouth of God, and every word is important. And we want to know as much as we can about every word in the Bible. I'm sorry to say, I do not think that is going on. That is not going on. We'd like to believe that it is, but I think that's pure wishful thinking. Thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Yes, Mr. Campy?
Yes.
Could we turn to Revelation chapter 7, verse 4?
Revelation 7, verse 4. There we read, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Now, what is your question?
My question is, are those 144,000, are they true believers?
Yes, these are the true believers that were saved during the church age. Now, because it figures out, and the God insists that there's 12,000 from each of 12 tribes, and he's saying from all the tribes of Israel, and yet there are 2 tribes that are not even named here in this list of tribes, so that we know that the Israel he has in mind is the spiritual Israel. Yeah. The churches are congregations, and because there were exactly 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes, we know that this has to be a symbolical number. The 12 signifying completeness, and the 1,000 or the 12th signifying fullness, and the 1,000 signifying completeness, the complete fullness of all those who were saved throughout the church age. And it may be close to the actual number, or it may be much less than the actual number, or it could be greater than the actual number. We cannot tell, except that there's so much language in the Bible, and it's not refuted in any way by the historical account of what has been happening in the churches throughout the church age, that indicate that at any time in the church age, it's very, very few that actually have become saved.
Thank you so much, Mr. Campy.
Thank you. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
I have a question in Job chapter 7, verse 1 through 3.
Job chapter 7. Let's look at that. Job chapter 7. Verse 1 to 3. Is there not an appointed time to man upon earth? Are not his days also like the days of an hireling? As a servant earnestly desireth the shadow, and as a hireling looketh for the reward of his work, so am I made to possess months of vanity, and wearisome nights are appointed to me. When I lie down, I say, when shall I arise? And the night be gone, and I am full of tossing to and fro unto the dawning of the day. This is, of course, Job speaking in his agony, his total agony, because of the enormous plagues that have come upon him and the pain that he is feeling. But he is emphasizing that mankind still has an appointed time, and that's agreed. That is not contrary to anything the Bible teaches. And shall we go to our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum. Oh my, we have come to our break, and so we'll pause for this message. As we continue the Open Forum, shall we take our next call? Welcome to the Open Forum.
Brother Campy, am I on the air?
Yes, go ahead.
The reason I'm calling is, I called you 5 days ago, but the reason I'm calling is, I think you should take rest and shorten this Open Forum. You're coughing so much. I think you also have to take care of your health.
Well, I'll tell you, this is the problem of I've had open heart surgery a few months ago, and now there comes the aftermath of getting a heart that has been living with a leaky heart valve for 87 years, and now getting accustomed to living with a repaired heart valve, and it has to all harmonize together in our body, and so this takes a while. And in order to assist this, the doctor prescribes various medicines. I'm taking a whole lot of medicine, and some of this medicine has side effects. The side effects are more of a problem than what the original problem was at times. And one of the problems is that one of the medicines I take does cause me to cough from time to time. It's not, I'm not suffering. It's not a serious matter. It's a side effect that I have to live with. And if I were an ordinary citizen and we're not on a public program like the Open Forum, nobody would know about it. It's just a private matter that maybe my family might have to put up with some coughing now and then. But here, when I'm here on the Open Forum, I have no options. I have to keep going, and so if I begin to get a little bit of a coughing spell, I have to live with that. But it is not. It's from the medicine. It's not indicative of another deeper problem. I'm quite certain. So we just have to be patient about it, and slowly on God's healing mercies will overcome this. I truly believe. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum. Welcome to Open Forum.
Yes, regarding the earthquake that is to take place immediately after the rapture, how are you sure that it will occur immediately and not like a month or two after the rapture? Or
the reason we can, you've asked a fair question, because as it is reported in the Bible, in Revelation chapter 9, it does not indicate, as it is reported, that it will be right at the beginning of the day of judgment. However, the Bible does indicate that all the bodies of first of all, the rapture will take place. And when the rapture takes place, it means all the graves will be thrown open. Now, they're thrown open by an earthquake, just like the bodies of some of the saints came out of the grave at the time that Jesus was hanging on the cross. There was an earthquake. And so we know, therefore, because the rapture occurs at that time, and when the rapture occurs on the first day, that will also be the day when the unsaved that are not saved, their bodies will be thrown out. So we can be pretty certain that it'll all happen on that first day. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum. Welcome to the Open Forum.
Brother Campin?
Yes.
Yes, good night. Brother Campin, may the Lord bless you and keep you and give you wisdom, knowledge, and to continue to teach the word of the Lord to the people of this world. Brother Campin, I have one question for you. On 2 Samuel chapter 24.
2 Samuel 24.
Verse 12.
2 Samuel. Verse 12, there we read, Go and say unto David, Thus saith the Lord, I offer thee three things. Choose thee one of them, that I may do it unto thee. Now this was after David had sinned in an act of pride. He wanted the nation numbered, so he could boast about how many people were in the nation of Israel in his day. He had been admonished by his general, no, don't do that, David, but David insisted on it because God had a larger plan. It was time for other reasons to bring judgment on the nation of Israel. So, as a product of David's sin, God said, David, I give you your choice. There are three different ways I want to bring chastisement upon Israel. And then he named them. He said, so God came to David and told him and said unto him, Shall 7 years of famine come unto thee in thy land? Or wilt thou flee 3 months before thine enemies while they pursue thee? Or that there be 3 days of pestilence in thy land. Now advise and see what answer I shall return to him that sent me. The prophet is asking David to give his answer. And David chose the 3 days of pestilence, and it was so horrible that I think it was 70,000 people who died in that pestilence.
Thank you very much for your wisdom. Bye.
Thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Camping, I heard that you are absolutely sure the world's going in May the 21st, 2011. So I had a question for you. I heard you say that on one of your programs. If you're sure about that, why don't you get a lawyer to write up a thing on May the 22nd, 2011? All your money, your house will be turned over to a charity. That will prove that you really believe what you're teaching.
Well, you see, why do I have to prove? It's not my date. It's the Bible's date. If you read the little booklet I prepared, We're Almost There, you'll find numerous proofs from the Bible. Just because I try to prove that this is what the Bible is saying by such a crazy thing as what you're suggesting, that doesn't prove anything. That just proves that I believe it. But it's not whether I believe it or not. It's what does the Bible say. And so I tell people constantly, and I mean it with all my heart, don't trust me. I simply have available for you the details of how I have derived this just from the Bible. It did not come through a dream or a vision or an intuition or because of just a thought that has entered into my mind or what is reasonable. It has all been derived by hard study, hard language, the direct language from the Bible. And then you read that and make up your own decision whether you believe it or not. I can't tell anybody to believe it. God has to tell them. And all I can do is show them where this has been derived from the Bible. But thank you. And in other words, if I could take action, would show that I'm more convinced than ever. Who am I? I'm just a teacher of the Bible, and I can be wrong. So that doesn't prove anything at all. The proof comes from when you study the Bible. And that's why when people read We're Almost There, they should read the entire little booklet. It's only 70 pages because it's right near the end of that study that suddenly we find there's proof after proof after proof that are so relevant and so heavy that it could only be true because and it gives real certainty to that date. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Oh, yeah. How you doing, Mr. Camping? I've been trying to get through to you for quite some time. I guess it's time I get my question answered. In the Bible, it does state that we're to go along with the laws of the land until they conflict with God's laws. Now, when we find that they are conflicting with God's laws, what are we supposed to do? Nothing, or make a stand?
Well, let's for example, let's suppose that the law of the land became the fact that every same-sex marriage has to be honored and be regarded as a legitimate marriage. Now, no true believer would accept that at all. But that doesn't mean that we as a true believer have to engage in same-sex marriage. Let the unsaved of the world go along with those kind of laws, but we aren't being asked to do that. Now, if we were told by the government, look, we want you to find somebody of your same sex to marry, we'd have to say, no, we can't do that. Well, we're going to punish you if you don't do that. Well, okay, punish me, but we cannot do that. That's a different matter.
What about the fact that, we're supposed to have dominion over the land and they won't let us harvest herbs, for instance? I mean, all the things that they are keeping us from in this country today, it almost seems communist.
Well, we don't have dominion over the land. We're just a citizen of our nation. In fact, we have freedoms that most nations have never experienced. We are able to vote for our lawmakers and so on. And vote for whether we agree with a law or not. And that's a freedom that most nations don't allow their citizenry. But that doesn't mean that we're entitled to have dominion over the land. That just happens the way we are set up. But historically, a king ruled, and he had the power of life and death.
Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum. Welcome to Open Forum.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Camping. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead with your call.
Yeah, there was a call. It was a kind of crazy call telling you that if the world doesn't end, to sell your house and whatnot. That's kind of crazy, because if you were to do something like that, you're giving indication that maybe the world will not end. So that's a crazy kind of conversation the person brought up, just to let you know.
Well, but the worst part of it is that people want me to prove that I believe that with all my heart. Hey, look, I'm not the authority. The Bible is the authority. And I do believe it with all my heart, and that's why I teach it so constantly. I'll tell you, this matter of constantly emphasizing May 21, 2011 is the end. It's certainly going to happen. My neck is out as far as anybody wants to put it. And I don't hesitate to do that, because I believe that's what the Bible teaches. But the proofs don't come from me. The proofs come from the Bible. And that's why before people come up with those kind of ideas, they better read We Are Almost There and look at the proofs for themselves. They come from the Bible. That's all important. But thank you. Thank you for calling and sharing, or you have a question. Or maybe we've lost that caller. Good evening. Welcome to Open Forum.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. I have a question. My niece recently came to me and told me that she had an abortion and out of wedlock. And then she came to me the other day and said, no, she really didn't get the abortion. And I said, oh, thank God. But she's scared that her mom is going to tell her to get an abortion. What kind of advice do you have? And I'll take the answer offline.
Well, this whole matter of fornication, which is producing babies that do not have by mothers that are not married, has created lots of other problems, and it has, of course, encouraged the whole matter of abortion. If a child, a young lady, gets into that situation, and if she has the confidence of her mother and trusts her mother or father, then they can work together on the problem. Of course, abortion should never be tolerated by a child of God. But unfortunately, most people in the world are not children of God. They by creation they are, but not by salvation. They really want to go their own way. So regardless of what the Bible teaches about the taking of life, they're going to go their own way anyway. And so I can't give any instruction in any particular instance. The Bible gives the instruction, we are not to kill. The Bible, and wonderfully in our country, there's plenty of parents or potential parents that would like to have a baby, and and if they go to the right authorities, they can have someone adopt that baby that was born out of wedlock. That's one solution. It doesn't solve the sin problem, but because only salvation solves the sin problem. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Hello.
Yes.
Campy?
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead with your call.
How are you this evening?
Very well, thank you.
Very good. Listen, I was wondering concerning Israel coming out of Egypt. Would that be considered a typify like a form of rapture that's going to take place that's supposed to take place in the New Testament?
No, that does not typify the rapture. It does typify salvation.
Okay.
You know, I am the Lord. Remember the Ten Commandments that start out in Exodus 20. I am the Lord thy God that has brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. In other words, their enslavement in Egypt, from which they came out of in the year 1447 BC, typify the enslavement that we are in before we're saved. The Egypt representing the world. We are enslaved to the world. We want to follow the world. We are enslaved to Satan. We are in rebellion against God. And when they came out of Egypt, that was typifying what salvation is. Even though Israel itself did not become saved, it represents what salvation is, but it didn't mean that meant that they actually did become saved, because very, very few of them entered into the land of Canaan, which again typifies the kingdom of God.
Okay. Well, answer me this. The timeline. I don't know. I know you did a lot of research on the Bible concerning the timeline from the beginning of Genesis.
What about the timeline?
The timeline I'm concerned about is from the first day that God sent Moses to Pharaoh until they came out of Egypt. How much time do you know? I was wondering if you know how much time transferred with all the plagues and everything.
Well, we don't know the time that Moses first came to speak to Pharaoh until they left. The Bible does not give that information. At least I don't remember ever reading it in the Bible. We know there were 10 plagues. We know that. But how much space there was between each plague and how long each plague endured, we don't know those answers. And so that would enter into the area of speculation, which is not of any value.
Yeah, I agree with you totally.
Thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Hey, Mr. Camping, I got cut off. I had one more question for you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead with your question.
I know someone that they're listening to your teaching about the end is May the 21st. They cashed their 401k in. They sent your radio station the money. They're also thinking about selling their house and just renting for the next 2 years, so they can send your radio station the money. But if you won't even back up what you say by doing what I said a while ago, what am I supposed to tell them? They already did it. They cashed in their 401k, sent your radio station the money. Now you won't even back up what you say, show some faith in what you're teaching, but you want everybody else to send their money to you. What am I supposed to tell them?
You know, everyone has to answer to God for themselves. You're not the judge of that person. You don't have to tell them anything. You don't have to tell them anything. When a person, for example, becomes a child of God and changes his whole lifestyle, because now Christ is number one in his life, not this world. All of his unsaved friends will not, and loved ones will not understand him at all because they don't understand salvation. And so they're not able to judge why that person did it, or what glory or what joy that person receives from doing what he does. We have to, everyone has to answer to God for themselves. And frankly, there will be people who will be deciding, the world's only going on for another 2.5 years or a little more, and I don't need this retirement money, or I don't need this for the future. I had been planning this or planning that, and now they want to make it available to glorify God has given the command that we are to tell the world about this. And so that's their pleasure. That's good there if they wish to do that. Then, and their unsaved friends or who look at what they're doing and look on in astonishment, but it's not their problem. It's not their problem. That individual is living his own life before the Lord as he wants his whole life to tell for Jesus. But the others are critical because that also becomes it becomes kind of a slap at them because they're not doing anything. They don't want to spend anything to try to tell the world that we're near the end, and so they are trying to solve the issue by looking with crossed eyes at the individual that is doing what he is doing. But each of us have to walk before God as God opens our spiritual eyes. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, can you read Revelations 18:2?
Revelation 18, verse 2.
Yeah.
There we read, and he cried mightily with a strong voice. Let me start with verse 1. And after these things I saw another messenger come down from heaven. Notice I used the word messenger because the word angel is the word messenger, and who is it? Is it Christ himself? Is it an angel? Is it, we don't know. But we do know we're safe if we say messenger. After these things I saw another messenger come down from heaven having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. That's the Lord Jesus Christ, this messenger. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful birds. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and so on. Now, what is your question?
Okay, my question is, in Revelations 18:2, the last two words are hateful birds. So that's like a spiritual, figurative picture of the churches, because the churches are now filled with hateful birds, because that was the point the church became apostate.
Yeah.
Now, this study on Isaiah 34, there's a lot of birds mentioned in Isaiah 34.
Yes.
And I'm thinking there's a connection. I'm thinking Isaiah 34, all those birds are really connected to Revelations 18:2.
You are correct. You are absolutely correct. Both in Isaiah 14, Isaiah 34, they are connected to Revelation 18:2. God typifies the unsaved who remain in this world during the day of judgment as hateful unclean birds who make their nests here and live here during that short period of time. They are typified by unclean fowl or unclean birds. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Hi, Mr. Camping.
Yeah.
My question is, what happens to anybody who's born during the 153 days between May 21st and October 21st?
To anyone who is born during, well, they, of course, would not be, there's no salvation during that period. It means that they are born as unsaved people, and they will simply die during that period, and that'll be the end of them.
Born between that time, there's no chance of salvation at all.
Yeah, hold on, we're going to pause for a message. Anyone who is still alive on May 22, 2011, whether they're in the womb of their mother or whether they're living as a person, there is no possibility of salvation for them. The day of salvation has come to an end. There is no mercy of God whatsoever. It is the day of judgment. And that is why during these next half years, we should be really examining our life. Am I really a child of God or not? And recognizing that even as the Ninevites sat in sackcloth and ashes, that is, they humbled themselves before God, and they tried their best to turn away from their sins. That is, they repented of their sins, and they cried to God for mercy. Is it possible that God might change his mind? And because the whole city did this, God was able to change his mind. Unfortunately, that possibility of crying to God for mercy during this next 2.5 years is still there. And individuals, as they began as unsaved people, they may end up as saved people, but as a whole world, no. The world will remain in denial. They will not want to cry to God for mercy.
Now, I know the Bible speaks of the free gift of salvation for all, so I was just wondering, it seemed like the people who were born during that time would not have a chance for salvation.
Because God is the one who decides who is to become saved. And we're chosen before the foundation of the world. And that has all been accomplished long before this world was created. And God will see to it that all those that he planned to save will have become saved before we get to that time of the end. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead with your
my
call.
question is on May 21 of 2011. I'm wondering, do we have the earthquake before the rapture, or do we have the rapture before the earthquake?
They're all one and the same.
Yeah, because the graves, don't they have to open first?
The graves are opened by the earthquake.
Correct, right.
And then the believers' bodies are caught up out of the graves.
The first would be the dead in Christ who get their glorified bodies.
Yes.
And then I was curious about if then perhaps the true believers might experience the earthquake.
They will not. To
some degree, if you see where I'm going with this.
I don't know. We can speculate about those things, but it's all in God's hand. We do know at the instant of the rapture, the true believers are turned into their glorified spiritual bodies and caught up.
You did have one caller earlier. I believe in Scripture it mentions the fact that the earthquake it takes place within the same hour as the rapture in terms of a time reference.
Well, I don't know why it's important to.
No, it's just a curiosity.
It's just a curiosity.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Hi, Mr. Camping. How are you this evening?
Very well, thank you.
I'd like to address this phone call to a previous caller who had called in about her niece who is pregnant out of wedlock. And she mentioned that her niece is very worried and concerned, especially about approaching her own mother. I would say that I think this woman, this young lady, her aunt, needs to approach the daughter and ask her if she would like her to be an intermediary and try to set up a meeting of the three women, the mother, the daughter, and the aunt. And I would suggest that if she does that, that she starts the session off as she can work into it and let them know that when three are joined together, that there Jesus is. And start it with a prayer and then try to open up the avenues of communication between the three of them. And
there's a lot of different plans that we could set up, but that family has to work through this, and the first thing that ought to be done is the prayer comes first, that those involved and who are most concerned should be beseeching the Lord for wisdom, and really praying for the mercy of God. That's always the beginning point of all this, because we don't know what relationship the mother has to the daughter, or a sister of the mother have to the daughter. There's a lot that we don't know, but we can always pray, and we all get into predicaments at times of one kind or another, in boxes that we can't get out. But I'll tell you, the beginning point is just to throw it all on the almighty arms of Christ. Oh, Lord, I'm in trouble. Oh, Lord, I'm in trouble. Have mercy, have mercy, have mercy, and show me a way. But thank you for your suggestion, and shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Yes, sir, Brother Campy.
Yes.
God bless you and Family Radio. But I just wanted to make a point. The man that called was...
I'm sorry. Would you turn your radio off, please? Please turn your radio off.
If something's sin, we know that Judgment Day, why would we offer it to somebody? I think that would be a great violation of what God tasked all his true believers to be, and wouldn't even consider a thought of that nature in their mind to give somebody something that we know would put them into eternal damnation and destruction in hell. So I just wanted to make that point.
All right.
Well, really don't have to call in maybe once every 4 or 5 years, because people say it all when I listen, and I learned that from you, and I thank God for it, and bless you and Family Radio.
All right. Well, thank you for calling and sharing. We have a lot of echo on that call, and so we're not able to continue visiting. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Hello, Brother Camping.
Yes.
In the Bible, God tells us that the true believers are the bride of Christ. So does that mean that when the true believers are raptured, that they are with their new resurrected body, that they are going to receive a new resurrected soul, which is really the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ, and becomes one?
No, they received their new resurrected soul at the moment they became saved. And they could have lived in this world for 100 years after becoming saved. And then, on the last day, they received their eternal resurrected bodies. But they're two separate events altogether.
So, what does it mean when the Bible tells us about the married of the true believers to the Lamb.
What does it mean? Excuse me. What does it mean to be married? Well, you see, this is, of course, a picture of the intimacy that relates between Christ and the believers. We're also called the sons of God. We're also called the bride of Christ. And God uses the picture of a marriage feast, so that at the time that we are raptured and our salvation is complete in every sense in the word, we sit down at the marriage feast of the bride and the Lamb. Now, that doesn't mean it's a literal marriage feast. It is simply a figure to indicate the intense identification or closeness of the true believer with Christ. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Talk about Psalm 52, verse 8.
Psalm 52, verse 8. Let's go look at that. Psalm 52. Verse 8, there we read, "But I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the mercy of God forever and ever." Now, what is your question? Did I read the right verse? Psalm 52, verse 8. You see, the house of God is the kingdom of God. God typifies the body of believers as an olive tree. Green signifies that which is very much alive, and we are a part of the kingdom of God. That is what the kingdom of God is made of all the true believers. But shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead with your call. Would you turn your radio off, please?
Yeah.
Turn it completely off.
All right. I want Psalm 1. Psalm 1. Yes. Verse 1.
Psalm 1, Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of Jehovah, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. Now, what is your question?
Well, there's 6 million and 6.5 million that are dirty, rotten sinners, and I could be one of those. We're all. So how do you explain? Does God bless us even though we're rotten sinners and never going to be saved?
Well, God in His mercy, He sends the warm sunshine upon both the believer and the non-believer, and the most wicked people as well as God-fearing people. He sends the benevolent rains upon them. He allows them to enjoy the fragrance of the flowers and the beauty of the flowers and the beauty of the sunset. God, in His marvelous mercy, does give every human being that possibility. But when it comes to salvation, either you're saved finally or you're not saved. And if you're not saved, you have to come finally under the punishment of God, and particularly those who are living in our day when the role of the true believer is to warn the world, make sure that the message gets out to every human being that Judgment Day is coming, so that the people are clearly aware that they can still cry to God for mercy. And that, just like Jonah preached to the Ninevites, and the whole city listened. Noah preached to the people of his day about judgment coming. The world was going to be destroyed. Nobody listened, and so they all perished. And that's the same thing that's happening today. The message has to go out just as surely as when Noah preached it or when Jonah preached it. And what people do with it, that is another matter. There will be a few, who will react like the Ninevites and cry out to God for mercy. And many of them will still become saved. On the other hand, the Bible teaches that most people of the world will react like in the days of Noah, like we read in Matthew 24. And this is terrible language to know this, but this is the way it's going to be. We read in Matthew 24, in verse 37, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days of Noah, for as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." And that's terrible to know, because that means that most people are going to remain in denial. They will not listen. They are hearing the warning that Judgment Day is about here. They're hearing the date. They can say they know the date that is being taught, but they're not listening with a desire to be obedient. They're hoping it'll go away. They are hoping it's not true. And they will be the ones who will be really enduring physically as well as eternally the wrath of God. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Hello?
Yes.
Mr. Camping?
Yes.
How are you tonight?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, I've been listening to you since 1974. My mother had a radio, and she kept it on 24 hours a day. So I've been listening to you for quite a long time, and I appreciate your ministry and what you're doing. I have a question about the origins of family radio. From my understanding, I think your expertise was in engineering. You have a degree in engineering. How did that transpose into starting the radio station? I imagine it must have been a daunting challenge. I'm just curious about that.
Well, I'll tell you, this is again the way God guides. This is God's good pleasure. All my life I have been interested in the Bible, and I have been trying to teach the Bible wherever. If a Sunday school teacher was needed, I was right there to teach, and so on. And I was very interested early on after I got my engineering degree as a civil engineer, and I was interested in trying to work in the home mission committee of our denomination to start other churches, other places. I just had this desire all the time. God just laid it on my heart. And so when I started my business, I thought right after the war years, it was, I began my business right after the Second World War, And I decided I was working for Kaiser Company at the time, and I could have stayed in Kaiser Company and worked up in the firm, but I saw that to be a good employee of a big organization like Kaiser Company, you really had to dedicate your life to that organization and be available at their beck and call. And I didn't want to be tied in that way because I wanted to have time to go to on field trips concerned with mission work and so on. And so my desire was to start my own business, because if I had my own business, then I could take off whatever time I wanted. I'm only stealing from myself rather than from the company I'm working for. And so that's exactly what happened. God opened the door, and I started my own construction business, but continued to seek opportunity to assist in any way to spread the gospel. Well, there was a young Baptist preacher who had been a missionary to Alaska, and he had to come to the San Francisco Bay Area to seek some help for one of his youngsters who needed some operations for things that were troubling his youngster. But he also had a real desire to share the gospel. But while he was there, he was selling, I believe, encyclopedias to make a living. But he was hoping. He had also been trained in radio. Now, it was interesting that in all my interest in trying to share the gospel, I had never had one bit of interest in radio. I remember when I was getting in my junior and senior year at University of California, I had a friend that there were four of us that boarded together, and one of my friends was an expert, a genius really in TV at that time, and I just had no interest at all. That was not my interest. My interest was in the Bible. But lo and behold, my friend Dick Palmquist came to my office. He had heard through a mutual friend of my interest in trying to spread the gospel, and he was trying to find a group of men who would pool their resources, buy a radio station in the San Francisco Bay Area, and bring the gospel to the San Francisco Bay Area. So he came to my office, and we talked together. Well, right then and there, I suddenly became really interested in radio. I didn't know a thing about it, but I became really interested, and so we had a couple of more discussions, and finally I said, I'll tell you what let's do. Let's form a non-profit corporation, and let's write into the Constitution that none of the board members can ever receive any personal gain from whatever happens to this organization. In other words, it is totally non-profit. If they would ever disband, then whatever profits were, whatever values were there would have to be donated to some other like organization. So we formed that kind of a corporation. I had another young man working for me as a salesman at the time who was a Christian, and the three of us became the initial board of directors. And that became Family Radio. We started out with one station in San Francisco, and within a couple of years we had been able to secure licenses in Sacramento and in San Diego, and then the next thing we were broadcasting in New York, and we began to grow and grow, and finally after quite a number of years. My own business had become reasonably successful. I had really, the glamour had gone out of it. I knew I could make a living running my own business, but that isn't really what I wanted. I wanted to share the gospel. And I began to ask myself, what in the world am I doing in my business here when there's so much more responsibility in family radio? I'd been doing the open forum by that time for a number of years, and I was the president of family radio, and so I sold my business and became a full-time volunteer with family radio ever since. Now that's just a thumbnail sketch of the beginning. But thank you for calling and sharing. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Yes, good evening, Brother Camping. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, I would like you to take a look at Job chapter 14, verses 12 through 14.
Job chapter 14.
Mm-hmm.
Verses 12 to 14. So man lieth down and riseth not till the heavens be no more. They shall not awake nor be raised out of their sleep. Oh, that thou wouldest hide me in the grave, that thou wouldest keep me secret until thy wrath be past, that thou wouldest appoint me a set time and remember me. If a man dies, shall he live again? All the days of our appointment time will I wait till my change come. Now you see, there are two issues here. First of all, natural man, they die and never live again. Job is writing till my change comes. As a child of God, he is speaking of the fact that there will be a resurrection to life of the believers.
Yeah, but look at verse 12. This is to the fact that those who died unsaved will never ever come back to physical life again. They said they will not awake, neither rise up out of their sleep.
Nor be, in other words, it shows that the death is the end. It is death. And this is just one verse amongst a whole number of verses in the Bible that emphasize the same thing.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for calling and sharing and offering that verse. And shall we take our next call, please? Welcome to Open Forum.
Romans 14:11.
Romans 14:1.
11.
Verse 11. Romans 14, verse 11. There we read, for it is written, as I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. So then every one of us shall give account of himself to God. All right, now what is your question? Oh, let's hold on. We've come to the end of our time. We can't answer this question. I'm sorry. We'll have to look at it at another time. And now I want to say good night and thank you for allowing me to come into your home to visit with you. Until our next Open Forum, may the Lord richly bless you.